introduction. I am with Dr. Elinor Greenberg, PhD. She is a psychologist and internationally renowned Gestalt therapy trainer who specializes in the diagnosis and treatment of borderline narcissistic and schizoid adaptations. Dr. Greenberg is also the author of the book, Borderline Narcissistic and Schizoid Adaptations, The Pursuit of Love, Admiration, and Safety. That is her book. She's also, her longer bio is on the event page. So she has a very long and illustrious career, and she's got plans to do a lot more. I just wanted to get to the conversation, and so that we're about to start. Elinor, thank you so much for being here. This is one of those conversations that when I started these lives, this is actually the conversation I wanted to focus on almost primarily and have the other ones support this one. So why don't we start with, I'm really curious actually about this one thing. How did you even get interested and involved in this particular field of study? And
you're having an echo.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you fine, but there was a little echo in your voice. So
okay, great. Were you able to hear my question?
My family of origin gifted me with a lot of understanding of all the different ways people could be dysfunctional on both sides. And I loved many of them. And I knew that highly dysfunctional people with personality disorders could also be good friends, relatives, people who took care of you, generous. So that was my background. And then I've been on my own since I'm 16.
Really?
I was homeless on the streets of New York for a year.
Wow.
And from that time on, I didn't live with another adult other than my friends.
Wow.
And I worked my way through. Yeah, I worked my way, took me years and years to work my way through Columbia University, 7 years because I was working. So what happened was, when I started training, I trained as a Gestalt therapist. Gestalt therapists do not usually diagnose because we felt it was pathologizing. That was the prevailing wisdom. People had been living with labels, and the labels had connotations. So the belief was we didn't have to. We would just work with what emerged. Mm-hmm. And then I realized in my first year of actually being in serious private practice that there was a subgroup of my clients that I didn't understand what was happening. Mm-hmm. They would really like me in the beginning, and then some little thing would happen or not happen. They'd misconstrue a word, and they'd get highly insulted, and then they would hate me. They would switch from love to hate. And sometimes they were so insulted when I was intending to be helpful by something I said that they would curse me, scream, and run out the door. I will label them screamers. Insulters, they would devalue my worth as a human being. And this was a person who's been telling me I'm saving their life 2 sessions ago. Mm-hmm. So I said, after the one, I could understand. Someone's quirky. 2, I can understand. When it happened for the 3rd time, I said, I need to go back to school. There's something I'm not getting. I went to my supervisor of old, who was a very bright woman, who's now passed on. And I said, Betsy, what's going on? She says, Elinor, I have very bad news for you. I said, what? Tell me. She says, sit down first. What is it, Betsy? You're going to have to go back to school and study psychoanalysis because the analysts are the only ones talking about this. And you don't speak psychoanalysis. You know, that's not your working language.
How long ago was this?
Well, I went into practice in 1974. Mm-hmm. And within a year of that, I realized I need to start studying something else. So I said, but what am I studying? What do you call it? Because I didn't even have a name for it. And at that time, names keep changing. It was called character disorders, which then became personality disorders, which I've renamed adaptations. But in my book and in my language, I switched back and forth because what happened was I didn't know the name of what I was seeing. I didn't know it had a name. I thought it must. Other people had observed it. And so I was deeply hampered in those days before the internet that I couldn't find information. And it became like a show, because I went to every place in town that was giving a lecture or class on borderline personality disorder that I could get into, and on narcissistic. I didn't know about schizoid yet.
Yes.
And I couldn't find someone I wanted to study with. They didn't seem to know much more than me, but they just didn't seem to be effective, what they were suggesting, or so academic that I couldn't transfer it over into my practice. They were speaking lots and lots and lots of jargon that I had to learn. So then I started flying up. I figured, well, they must know it at Harvard. There's lots of smart people at Harvard. They offer continuing ed. Long range short, that's what got me into it. I ended up at the Masterson Institute after 3 to 5 years of researching this with other institutes, and stayed there long enough to go on faculty, about 10 years, was personally supervised by Masterson. All that time, I was translating it into Gestalt therapy and teaching it to Gestalt therapists in their language. So I became bilingual.
That's amazing. That's like it. So for people, by the way, people are signing in and saying hello from all over the world: Moscow, Australia, New York, California, like all over the place. And for some places it's 4 o'clock in the morning. So that's how excited they are to be here and present to like this particular conversation. By the way, for those who are here and listening, please feel free to ask questions. If you're curious about something, if there's something in the conversation that you want to know more about, just put it in the chat and I will ask Elinor. So this is much your conversation as it is our conversation. What I love what you're saying is, and I'm actually like moved by it, is you're like, you as a human being, your incredible determination that even at like, you could have had that story and been like, all right, I'm just going to fall over and like sort of, just blame everybody and sort of die. But you didn't do that. You were like, no, I'm going to get into Columbia University and I'm going to actually like that's just a remarkable story and a remarkable human being that you did that. But that you had this passion and curiosity for knowledge about what was going on, and you didn't just write people off. You were definitely coming from a place of, how do I help and support the people who are coming to see me and understand why they're doing the things that they're doing?
Yes, exactly. And what I found was the prevailing wisdom. When I said that my first clients, because I really, in the beginning, I was focused on borderline, but I didn't realize there were schizoid clients in there. The prevailing wisdom was everybody advised me not to, all my colleagues. People were saying very unhelpful things, like, these people can't be helped, they'll sue you, you're going to need to double your malpractice, hire a lawyer if you're going to help that group, things like that, you'll never succeed. I don't believe in never succeed. If I can get out of the gutter literally, sleeping in crash pads in Greenwich Village, in the East Village, wherever I could find them, and be safe and I could get through a PhD program and I'm certified in 4 kinds of psychotherapy and conversant in 2 more, then I can do what I set out to do.
So yes, for sure. And you've proved that to be right. I have a question. So now that you've been studying so extensively about narcissism, borderline, and also schizoid, let's go into the different disorders, what they look like, how it manifests in a person. Speak about that a little bit, and then maybe I'll ask questions in between. Here, you've got, why don't you do that right now? Like, if you can.
I have a very simple, I have different methods of describing it.
Okay.
And the simplest one to start with, which doesn't make you have a disorder, is I ask people, if you had to choose between having love and fill in the blank with everything that love means, true love, unconditional love, nurturing love, all the different love, or admiration, which includes respect, adulation, prestige, etc., high position, or interpersonal safety, which means you control, your interpersonal distance, you have some autonomy. Now, everybody wants love, everybody wants admiration, everybody wants safety. But what's the order? What do you absolutely have? Are you willing to do this with me, Anna, on camera?
Yeah, I am. In fact, I was already doing it in my head. So yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah.
So what's your order? What's first that you need to feel to be with somebody on an intimate level? What do you need first? What's most important?
Love, like kindness, respect, um, like the kind of honesty where they'll tell me the truth for my own good. I don't know how that works, but
No, just think of love. We're now moving
love.
into
So
additional things.
love,
And what's the
respect.
second? Admiration. Respect goes under, admiration.
Yeah, I think so.
Respect.
Love, admiration. Then what were the other then safety. And then what were the other options?
Those are the only three options.
Oh yeah.
Borderline, narcissist, or schizoid.
Yeah.
So I identified most with love. Mine was exactly like yours.
Huh.
And so when I saw Anna's face for the first time, I felt warm, I'm impulsive, all sorts of things that I have in common with my borderline clients, except for the lack of control over emotions. I had abandonment. Now, borderline clients, narcissistic clients, when I use the word borderline, narcissistic, or schizoid, first of all, I'm not labeling a person. I'm labeling a pattern, the pattern that they're currently exhibiting of thinking and behaving. Now, a pattern is a set of habits. So before I go into the separate ones, just so we're all on the same page, is what habits are formed in the brain through repetition. Like if you want to speak a foreign language, you have to keep repeating it, and eventually neuronal networks connect and it becomes automatic. Mm-hmm. So when we're dealing with borderline narcissistic schizoid, habits that were adaptive in childhood for mm-hmm. a child of a particular temperament in a particular family at a particular time in that family's life. Mm-hmm. That why time is important is it brings in fate. If your home is burnt down, if you're at war, if you're an immigrant, if you're, all sorts of things will affect it, not just your parents' mothering and parenting style, but it's a whole. And so a little child adapts as best they can. And the borderline essentially, in most cases, cut a borderline deal. This is Ralph Klein's work. He talked about the deals you cut when you're a kid.
Yes.
So I wanted to give him a shout out if he ever hears this. And the borderline deal is essentially, I'll allow myself to be abused. Mm-hmm. I'll, reluctantly, but I want my mommy. These things all happen before the age of 4, they start. And when you're really, the first couple of years of life, say 1 to 3 is usually when these things are starting. And I will give up growing up to meet your needs or to try and please you. I'll be the borderline deal is I'll be a compliant child and I'll manage mommy's emotional problems. Usually it's mommy, it could be daddy. We have borderline daddies too. You ever see those bar fighters lose their temper? Instead of labeling them, the bikers I know, instead of labeling them they're borderline, they usually get, oh, you have anger management problems or substance abuse.
That's
no,
so
they're borderline personality
I never thought of it in those terms. Like I think of borderline as a different, like how it manifests differently than that. So that's really interesting. Continue, this is fascinating.
Okay, so I was closer to the borderline profile. I was impulsive. I was abandoned repeatedly. It was painful. It was hard to be alone because I spent a lot of my childhood alone in strange towns for one reason or another. And most of my borderline clients adapted, but they're still a child. They've told me over and over again, and if you've ever felt like this, you'll know what they feel, because at 16, I felt like that when I was on my own and couldn't rely on anyone else, is they feel like they're a child in an adult's body, and that doing the adult routine things that adults have to do was beyond them or boring to them, or required a degree of organization and permission to individuate, to be themselves, that they hadn't been given or prepared for as a child. So
I can by the way, I resonate with I have had different, but I like resonate with this, and I'm breaking through like some of the long-term patterning around this. And it's like, I'm like, there are people who are like, this is amazing, and they're making comments, and there's some questions that I'll come back to you with this, but I can feel people are like leaned in. So please continue around borderline, and then we'll go into narcissism and schizoid and all.
So people can have a whole spectrum of ranging from just having borderline issues. See, I thought when I first learned about borderline personality disorder, before they were calling it dysregulated emotions, I thought I hit all the notches. I was impulsive, I was abandoned. When I was in a hotel room by myself, I felt incredibly lonely, like my clients feel. Not, now I might be relieved to be in the room by myself. And then I would make other people into family members, new mothers and fathers, and have that kind of transference to them. And I would always have, because the borderline narcissistic and schizoid start forming so early in life when you're still one-on-one bonding with your mother. So I would form friendships that would replicate that bond. And then I knew when I kind of graduated out of it to post, what Freud would call Oedipal age, 5 or over, because a third person would come in. I could then be in trios, just like in a family with a mother, father, and a single child. And I grew out of that, but it's still comfy for me. Mm-hmm. So if you find that you're instant bonding, I still do that. I bonded to Anna like in 2 minutes of looking in her profile and getting the invite. Anna, is that truth? Yes. What's it from your point?
Yes.
You saw.
Do the same, absolutely. And for sure, I do the same thing. Yes.
Yes. And so a lot of people who were borderline, we have this instant bonding to people. Now, there's a whole range of people. Some people became borderline the hard way. Okay, a worse way than me. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, violence, people trying to murder you. I mean, really, really dreadful things. And they if you became borderline because you were devalued by a malignant narcissistic parent as worthless, you're carrying a lot of feelings about what names you were called and how you were treated. So sometimes borderline comes in a package where the person feels, I am ugly and unlovable. Sometimes that person shows up in my office and they're not ugly and they're not unlovable, but that's their conviction. So they might, instead of being impulsively joining, they would be frightened and distancing for fear that you're going to reject me because I'm unlovable, unwantable, I can't control my emotions, etc. down the line. And I've been told all these awful things. Mm-hmm. Is this clear?
It is. The reason why I'm looking to the side, just so that you have know what's going on, is that I'm reading people's comments and questions. And so whenever I look to the side, it's because I'm reading like what people's questions might be about what you're talking about. Yeah.
Now, I'll just briefly define narcissistic and schizoid in this kind of very simple way. It's far from complete, but it'll give you enough of a knowledge. Now, if you have a narcissistic adaptation, there was a different deal. The narcissistic deal is based on domination and admiration. Usually there's a head narcissist in the family who calls the shots. This can go in a number of ways. Some narcissists will support, I call it the we are great family. If you achieve, you get love and you get narcissistic supplies, respect, and things like that. But your real self goes unacknowledged. It's only your achievements that count. So the real self of the borderline goes unacknowledged because people are too busy doing whatever they're doing in her life to really think about his life, her life. I want to be, anything I say about one gender, sex, please apply to the other. I try to use they, but when I use it in writing, my editors cut it. They haven't caught up yet.
It doesn't matter what sex, it's people-based.
Yes,
yeah.
People-based things. So if a child person grows up in a narcissistic family, there's three possibilities. They are only rewarded. They will be rewarded and taken care of if they live up to the standards of the family, whatever that is. And if there's a disconnect because you don't have those particular talents, like you're a creative person born into a super academic family who doesn't value creativity but values how many papers you write a year and what college you get into, it's a mismatch. The narcissistic parent devalues the person who's the mismatch in that case. So going on, if your parents, some people have a parent that says, worship me and be my assistant, but never surpass me. And as long as you give them adulation and total respect, they will give you goodies. But God forbid you surpass them in anything. Most healthy parents want their children to surpass them, sacrifice for their children, put money aside for their children's education, and if their children do wonderful things, they're happy to be surpassed. Yeah. Or if their children are happy, you get surpassed, happy, you get the thing. But narcissistic parents who are competitive with their own children won't reward you. They'll devalue you. They'll put you in your place. You'll begin to feel very insecure. You'll start giving up authenticity, construct a false self that's more pleasing to your parents. The worst deal is when you have a failed exhibitionist parent or malignant narcissistic parent, and they are bitter or they are angry and they are hurtful and destructive. And they don't get narcissistic supplies from you being great, and they don't get narcissistic supplies from you being nice. They're Snow White's evil stepmother. They want to destroy you. By the way, Richard Gere plays a malignant narcissist, in my opinion, in the movie Pretty Woman. He spends his life. Yes. I will illustrate it with pop things.
Please do. This is amazing.
Okay. Now, I trust many people have seen the movie Pretty Woman. He plays I guess, a billionaire hedge fund mergers and acquisitions man. And he hates his father. And he has endless money. And he loves to take over companies against their will, run by powerful men who, on an unconscious level, represent his father. And then he takes apart the companies in front of him, giving away their life's work to watch them be disappointed. That is classical malignant narcissistic behavior. They thrive on destruction. Some narcissists thrive on construction. They give pediatric units to the hospital. So you have white knights and black knights in the terms of the Arthurian legends, people who want to be famous and for saving people, and people who want to destroy. And that's what they want to know. They want you to fear them. So if you grew up in that home, you are destroyed. You're likely to have schizoid personality disorder, not borderline or narcissistic.
So I know both of the other ones, and I'm really curious about schizoid personality.
So schizoid has nothing to do with schizophrenia. Schizo is a Greek version, I believe, of a Latin word, or a Latin version of a Greek word meaning split. So it's applied as a misnomer to a lot of disorders as a prefix. So there's schizotypal, schizoaffective, very serious disorder. Schizophrenia, very serious disorder. The last two are psychoses. Schizoid personality disorder is not a psychotic disorder. It is You may have a predisposition in some very extreme cases. We all have genetic predispositions to personalities that are more vulnerable or more resilient, things like that. But under the onslaught of malignancy, my schizoid clients decide that they decide this usually by age 7. So if you've thought about this at around age 7, you might consider the safety aspect, if that's important to you, interpersonal safety. Because my schizoid clients, they couldn't trust anyone to take care of them. Mm-hmm. They couldn't, everything that was theirs was up for grabs. Mm-hmm. And they were treated like a tool. They see themselves as aliens and robots. When they read a lot of philosophy, they read the existential philosophers, who many of them seem to be schizoid from their writing. They write on schizoid themes. The schizoids knew more extreme lack of attunement to them as a child. The borderlines, there was a misattunement, but it was the least. It's actually best if I had to choose which of these disorders to have to be the easiest to fix, borderline. Against what most people think.
Yeah.
The longest one, but they're all quite fixable, but the narcissist is the most complicated because the defense system requires them not to recognize they have a problem. So it's sort of like being on a pedestal, and if you just take away the pedestal, and because someone says so, you don't deserve to be on the pedestal, you should be really more egalitarian, they're going to fall. So they have a real impediment. The impediment when working with schizoid people is they've adapted by becoming highly independent, generally prefer to live by themselves, but not always, some marry, believe that no negotiation is possible with other people. So if they are in a relationship, they feel like whoever is dominant calls all the shots. And their only choice is to stay and be dominated or to leave. And if they leave, the fear is they will get so far from contact that they will never be able to connect with anyone ever again. And there is a movie theme that some of us have seen that occurs in schizoid dreams over and over again. And that is the spaceship dream. May I tell you something about it, Anna, and the audience?
Absolutely. You have me at the edge of my seat with everything. Yes.
Okay. So in this dream, someone is in space, in a spaceship, and they find that something needs to be fixed on the hull. And so they get into all their protection, and their handholds on the hull that they can hold on to while they go from handhold to mothership by a long hose that feeds them oxygen and keeps them connected. Now, as they go along the outside of the hull, out in space, all alone, no one else is in the ship with them, they lose their hold on their hold. And they start drifting away into the darkness of space where they can't tell if they're up or down, and no one will ever come or hear them scream. And they wake up in terror. Okay? Now they make movies of that. The other schizoid dream is Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because my schizoid clients report the poorest interpersonal boundaries, that they didn't have enough support to have a really core personality that's very strong. And that if someone mocks something they like, they could lose their ability to like it. Mm-hmm. And my schizoid clients usually come in with dissociation being a problem for them. They dissociate, they're highly functional. They can spend 6 months dissociated doing a job. Mm-hmm. They know they're dissociated, but they don't know what to do about it. That's how I first discovered schizoid. A woman, a very young, may I tell the story?
Yes. I just want to say this. I don't know about anybody else, but I am recognizing myself or my family or something in almost every circumstance you're talking about. During that dream, I started to get teary-eyed. Like yeah, I don't know about anybody else. If you are and you have the courage to, yeah, like give a thumbs up. Yes, keep going, please.
Okay, if you want to read, I actually collected schizoid dreams over 40 years. And I did a chapter on them in my book. It's chapter 13. And in chapter 3, I do differential diagnosis of, in common terms, and examples of all 3 personality adaptations and what makes it a disorder.
Yes. Yeah. Where can people say that again? Where can people find that? I'm sure people are like, yes, me too, for sure.
The easiest differential diagnosis is in my chapter 3. And if you want to find the chapter on schizoid dreams and what they meant in terms of the readiness of this person to make contact with other human beings and connect on an intimate level, chapter 13.
Okay.
And
chapter 3, chapter 13, keep going, yes.
Yeah, I think it's the only place I know where schizoid dreams have been systematically collected and explained, but it might not be. You know, it might just be that to me it's the only one. But I thought it was really important and that for those things. And I have narcissistic dreams, the narcissism section scattered in it.
Show the book again so that people can see it because they're asking about the book. So it's
called Borderline Narcissistic and Schizoid Adaptations, the Pursuit of Love, Admiration, and Safety.
Yeah.
I wanted love, admiration. Now I want to say something here before we go on.
We just linked it in the chat too for people. So people now have that as a link. Yeah. Yeah.
I want them to see it because the things mean something. The heart is the symbol for my borderline clients, okay? They love. The star, the golden star shining, is for my narcissistic clients. And the key, the antique key with the heart in the handle, but the lock part ahead of it, that's for my schizoid clients. I was torn between that and a nautilus shell who need protection. I wanted symbols that didn't shame anybody, that they could be proud to have, to be represented by. And I'm trying to be the sheltering trees that give people a little cover while they grow and evolve. So that's what that's about. And I had a tarot artist, I'm going to give Robert Place, who I highly recommend, who's also a historian, and you can read him on Quora or on his website, who did this and who totally understood and was the first person to tell me that I should speak to tarot readers at conferences about personality disorders. And I did. And I became I became psychology consultant to a tarot school, and I trained in tarot, and I have 3 degrees in tarot from the tarot school, www.tarotschool.com. The best people in the world, Walden, Ruth, Amber Stone. And if you want to see some of my articles using their projective techniques, tarot cards that they invented with my clients, I wrote 3 or 4 papers that are online. You go to the website, tarotschool.com, and you press on the side articles, and up I will come with some articles. I'm still psychology consultant, and I've presented at 3 tarot conferences.
I also want to include as well that you can go onto Quora as well, Quora, I think that's Quora. And in fact, Ruth Kim is in there like plugging away and putting all the links in there, which is amazing. She's prolific on Quora. So all of this and more is in her books, and also in the tarotschool.com where Ruth just linked, and then also on Quora. It's just, she's a prolific, and also on psychology. There's also another.
Yeah. I was invited to do a blog for Psychology Today.
Yeah.
And my blog is called Understanding Narcissism. And if you go to the online Psychology Today thing, you'll find my articles. I have about 52 articles. Last night, I posted a new one in honor of Anna and the show to have something fresh for her to connect to.
We're going to post it in just a second, so you'll see that.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my mission, should I talk about the mission?
Yeah, first, before you go there, talk about your mission, but then I also want to start giving people some tools, if possible. Like, because there are people who are asking questions of like, how do I diagnose, like what, like there are some questions in the chat around like, how do I?
Okay, here's how you know if you have a personality disorder. That was how I ended up deciding to train with the Masterson Institute instead of anyone else and the object relations people. Yeah. I was looking, but it was so confusing. Where's the difference between having some narcissistic traits and having a disorder? What's the difference between having what I had and having a full disorder? Yeah. or schizoid adaptations? And the people that had the answer with, excuse me, object relations, terrible language, great concepts. So it's all about splitting. If when you like someone, you see them only as all good, having no defects at all, having nothing about them that you like or dislike. Mm-hmm. And when they do something that gets you, or you see them as all bad. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have two binary categories, all bad or all good, with nothing in between. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then flipping, or one person flipping internally, I am all good. If I'm a narcissist and I'm an exhibitionist, I am the best. Mm-hmm. That's the all good. Mm-hmm. If I say, I am a piece of worthless garbage, that's the worst for the narcissist. Usually they use another word instead of garbage. I wrote a paper on the other word that is much more characteristic in all three personality disorders of narcissism.
You can use that word here if we use the language all the time. So if you want to go into that and use the word.
Sure. Another chapter I put in my book, I wrote it for Masterson at the Masterson Institute for their newsletter. It's called Shit, Shame, and Narcissism. It's a short paper, and it gives examples of my clients who pervasively use the word shit, shitty, or piece of shit to express when they were self-devaluing themselves, I am a piece of shit, or you are a piece of shit. So if you've been told by one of your parents or lovers, you're a piece of shit, you know, my mind goes, let's hear if they use the term again. Anybody can say, oh shit, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about dreams about shit.
Shitting on God, I'm such a piece of shit. Why did I do that? Or other people. You're such
right.
Shit. You're always such an like if you're doing that constantly, that's in your language. That's what you're referring to.
So I'm referring to, yes. So so each of the three personality disorders, and I'm holding my hands up, is binary. Yes. Remember, all good, I'll do all good, all bad. Okay, the way it hits. So borderline all good is I'm lovable, you love me. The feeling between us is one of love, mutual love. Okay, that's the all good for the borderline. The all bad for the borderline is you are a bad mommy. You're my abandoning mommy. I'm your ugly daughter. Speaking of me, I'm your ugly, unwanted, rejected, no one will marry daughter.
By the way, none of that has worked. None of that has served as true, by the way, for Elinor.
Yes, but and that wasn't said to me.
Yes.
But things have been said to people. So then you have the narcissistic all good is I am special, and you as an I'll do the three narcissists because there's three subtypes. As an exhibitionist, I am special, and you are my audience, raptly attentive to me. And as a therapist, all you do is empathically resonate with everything I say and validate it for me. Validate every single thing I say, empathize with every moment I have and everything I do, and never criticize me. That is the all good side for the narcissist. The all bad side would be I am feeling like worthless piece of shit, and you are my rejecting, hostile, sadistic, mean, whatever parent. It's usually, and it could be on the mother, on the father, but it's really very strong. And the feeling between us is mutual hatred and disgust and despicable.
Contempt, yeah,
And
contempt and disdain.
contempt. Thank you, Anna. So then we have the schizoid one where the all good is I am independent. I'm independent. I don't need anybody. And you are willing to keep your distance. You're willing to let me set the distance, and you're not going to approach me unasked. You're not going to tell me what I'm feeling or what I'm thinking or take what's mine. And that's an all good situation. I am safe.
I'm the one who's in complete control over every single thing, and that's the only way I can feel safe.
That's right, of mine. I don't need to control you, but I need to control my distance from you and not let you penetrate me. Mm-hmm. And the all bad is I am in existential dread. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm so disconnected from life that I'm entirely going out of existence on some way, but I'm in the living body. And my life is meaningless. I will just have to endure meaninglessness and loneliness and nothingness till I die.
That is such a distant, like I literally, you're talking about so many things that I literally can see myself, or like, and like that particular feeling that you're talking about is this profound dissonance between like the world and life is happening around you and people are laughing and you're like, it felt, I remember being in those moments where I'm just like not attached to the world, not attached to people, and can barely even be in there. And it's just like as though I'm so far from what's happening. It's this horrible feeling. All of the things that you're talking about, I sort of recognize and see myself in. So, okay, yeah.
Just one thing here. So if you have this either all bad or all good, whichever form, and you have no nuances in between, it's like there's perfect and there's imperfect. Okay. And there's no nuances. You can get an A or an F. Yeah. That's it. There's no grades in between.
That's gentle.
And somebody, if you can project the F onto somebody else and see them as the failure and the A onto yourself or whatever. But if there's nothing in between for you, then you qualify for a personality disorder in the object relations system. And the goal would be to get you an integrated picture that's realistic and stable, and that allows you to see yourself and other people in a realistic, stable, and integrated way that includes both your likable and disliked points about you, both your good traits and your bad traits. And an integrated picture, if you want to know what it here is like, someone, I ask them to describe themselves, they'll describe, Anna, do a self-description that's integrated. Can you, or you want me?
Yeah, absolutely, I can. So I am a confident, in like an alive, confident, dynamic, stubborn, at times can be shut down, sometimes judgmental, talented, boastful, like the exact opposite. Like I have like, it's multifaceted all over. I'm like a full range of human over here.
Right. That's a perfect example. Most of us, if we're truthful with ourselves, we can list our qualities, both liked and disliked, if we don't have a personality disorder. If you have a personality disorder, for safety, you have a split, usually because your parents were too extreme and they either treated you as all good or all bad, or they didn't have whole object relations themselves. They didn't get it. And so they couldn't teach you anything because they flipped. And they were unpredictable and unstable. When you don't have whole object relations, Now, I'll add one concept. Those of you who have been abused by people who claim to love you, what probably happened was they didn't have whole object relations and they didn't have object constancy. What does this mean? It means that when they're in a fight with you or they're angry or disappointed in you, that moment, the whole history and context of the relationship is background for them. They can't access it. They're in the moment of disappointment or anger, and you are seen as all bad. And therefore, they have no limits to how much, except their inner limits, that they will punish you for whatever it was that was done to them, whether it's verbal devaluation, giving you the cold shoulder, screaming at you, hitting you, abusing you in terrible ways. That's what's going on very often when somebody kills their mate and then afterwards in a fight, and afterwards is cradling them in their arms, crying, saying, but I love them so much. I can't understand this. I want them back. They lost whole object relations. They lost object constancy, which depends on whole object relations in the fight. So if you're with someone that doesn't have whole object relations, some people can maintain all good for quite a long time. Some people lose it every 10 minutes. With every word you say, like with certain narcissistic clients that I'm with, they can't keep they can't keep all good for a day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in a session, they can go from all good to all bad with me. They can go from best therapist to worst therapist to screaming to running out of the room.
Yes.
I could say more, but let's go. You have people.
So my question to that is, oh God, you're kidding me. We have 12 minutes left. How is that even possible? Oh my gosh. Okay. You were talking and there were so many things. Like I was thinking, we as a nation have a malady of the soul. Like what you're speaking to, I could see it in our own society, what we are moving through right now, how we devalue and we just like split, and we have people who are just like nothing and a piece of we're right, you're wrong. It's just like how we talk about each other and ourselves. My question inside of everything you're talking about is, how do we individually create the nuance and the gray in between the black and white of what you are speaking about?
Oh, I wrote an article on that, and how to. I have two posts. One's posted on Quora, the short versions, because Quora favors short posts, and I get 800 to 14 or 1,500 words on my site today. So
there's a lot of writing that she has about that.
There's a link on Psychology Today on my blog. There's an article called "How to Get Whole Object Relations as an Adult."
Okay.
And I had to get it from me. I was very close.
That was my other question, was how did you get, I know for me what I did, but how did you get it how did you build that spine up for yourself so you weren't like being, constantly reactive towards what was going on out there?
Well, for me, I realized that I was fairly close to it. So I had to figure it out for me. I had been in therapy, but no therapist had ever diagnosed me because I was so functional. If you're highly functional, you're unlikely to get a diagnosis unless you're a narcissist, because narcissists devalue many people publicly. So it's very easy to see their inner workings, what's going on with them. But schizoids, nobody even notices, and I can't tell. But for the whole object relations, I realized that if I constructed a photo album, I have good visualization. Some people have photo albums. Some people are list makers. It doesn't matter. I'll tell you how to do it right now. It's not that hard. You make a list or a series of photos that represent all the good aspects of yourself or your mate or whomever that you're engaging with. And you make a list next to it of the bad aspects that you dislike. And you have two lists. They could be separate. And you keep going back and forth. When you look at the list of the good things or the photos, try and remember the good feelings that went with it. So I have a list in my mind, it's a movie in my mind, of nice moments with my husband where he was being perfectly adorable or doing things for me. And I was already still getting it when I met him. We're married 42 years. So I have this lots of good things in the photo album. So when I'd feel myself start to sway, like we'd have a marital argument or whatever, I could bring up the list. That way I would see, yes, I don't like this, but I love this. Mm-hmm. So both exist in the same person, and let me take a step back and just pause for a second. Let me get out of fight mode and remember I am talking to someone I love. Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm talking to myself, if I'm seeing myself in an unrealistic way too, that's all bad. I'd look at my list of the things I've accomplished, my good traits, my value. And I do recommend you, depending on which side you need most, but you keep rereading them side by side. And if you're going to be in a situation where you know you might be challenged, triggered to lose it, read the good side. You read it every day in the morning, do the photos so that you're prepared ahead of time for that challenge. And your goal is to try and stay balanced, or to rebalance sooner than you would have otherwise, to cut the time that it takes you to remember that you love this person, whether it's yourself or another person.
It's great. And then we don't have a lot of time, but when dealing with someone who is devaluing you in a way that's dramatic, how do you what's your
stop it?
Okay, take for instance, let's play act really quickly. You're just a jerk and you smell of elderberries and you have you're just not that smart. I'm doing it not that great, but you're not smart and I don't like you and what's wrong with you and so and blah blah blah.
Okay, now am I your friend or your therapist?
You're either way. What's the difference? Let's say friend, because most people are not therapists. Let's say it's a friend or in a relationship with me.
Friend, let's have this conversation when you're a little calmer.
No, let's have this conversation right now.
Nope. Sorry, I'm not up for it. Bye. Boundaries. You have to know where your boundary is. Someone starts to abuse you. If you let them abuse you, they're not going to stop. They're going to escalate, because if they don't have whole object relations, you're the enemy. And anything they're capable of doing, they'll do. Not everybody's capable of much violence. Some people are easily capable of violence. Mm-hmm. I have pictures of people. Many people have been hit by the remote.
Yes.
Okay.
That was a favorite tool in my, that was absolutely.
Okay. So I forget where so I would just stop the person. I would leave till they can calm down. Now, there are people I like a great deal who could devalue me, have devalued me. And I don't have to sink to their level. That doesn't work. My rule is the sanest person in the room, the most compassionate being, has to put up the boundary, because the other person can't and won't. So my goal is harmless power. I don't want to harm anyone, but I want the power to put up a boundary and to protect others from the abuse. That the person at the moment is either out of control or they're not savvy enough to even understand the depth of the pain that they're causing. One other little thing.
Yes.
Narcissists lack emotional empathy. Now, this is really a problem. They might have a teeny tiny bit to somebody exactly like them but they pretty much are known. They can have cognitive empathy. So if you're a narcissist listening to this, use your cognitive empathy. That's the ability to think through, who am I with? Do I generally love them? You can use your cognitive empathy to prevent abuse. The emotional empathy protects to some degree, because if you have emotional empathy, it's like watching someone hit their thumb with a hammer. You automatically tense. You can't hit that person easily. It's very hard to do real physical damage to someone if you have strong emotional empathy. So, but it's not hopeless. It's hard to get. Object relations is fairly easy to get. It's just repetitions and repetitions and repetitions and willingness to keep going with it till you have it. And it's a recipe almost. And you can think of your own recipe on your own. Scrapbook.
I also think commitment, like there's actually has to be on the part of the person who's like developing it, because it sounds on paper easy, but like the actual development is like creating neuronal pathways that just weren't there, and actually like it requires some commitment, like going to the gym or going to doing anything that's a little bit challenging. You actually have to be committed to that process for some greater good for yourself and for the people around you. We have it's unbelievable to me, 3 minutes left. Say whatever it is at the end that you want people to take away from this much larger conversation that is at play in ourselves and in the world around us. Anything that you want us to take away from this conversation.
Wherever you are, whatever has happened to you, there is hope for you to evolve with appropriate treatment and methods. There's both self-help methods and there's hope. I was abandoned many times. I was homeless from 16 to 17, living and crashing wherever I could on the streets in New York in the East and West Village. I got myself back to school. I was a high school dropout because I was abandoned. I had to get back to school. I had a little help with that. And then I went to college. It took me 7 years because I had to work at the same time, part-time. And I got my 2 masters and PhDs. What I want to say is it's not hopeless for anybody. There are times when I didn't see what the next move would be, but there's always a next move. If you pay attention to the way out, the path will occur and you will notice it. If you have your head down with victimhood, and as much as many people, we are victimized, but if your head's down from being in victimhood, you won't be looking around for the way out. I was lucky. My head wasn't down. I wasn't deeply ashamed. I was just abandoned, with what all that means. And I was looking around a lot and I could see way out. And I also, for those of you who are on a spiritual path, connect with the divine energy of the world. I truly recommend it. If you're an atheist, okay, fine, this path won't be for you. But for anyone else, going inside quietly, meditating, saying a prayer from your tradition, or even forming an intention to get help and wisdom, and then put your ego to one side, your own thoughts to one side, and ask that divinity or a form of divinity to tell you what's the answer to your problem, what you should do next. That's what I did, and that's how I got out of Greenwich Village.
I got out of Greenwich. It sounds like the title of a movie. That's how I got out of Greenwich Village. Thank you, not just for this hour, but for that spirit inside of you that instead of looking down on the ground and feeling sorry for yourself, which you could have in that circumstance, some curiosity, some part of you was like, no, I want more and I want something different, decided to go from that to this and just kept moving ahead. And whatever passion, curiosity, intention, whatever it was, ambition that motivated you, spirit, God, divine source, thank you for all of it.
Thank you, Anna, for giving me this opportunity to be on your wonderful show with your great energy. I love, love your energy. It's like bubbles. Audience, don't you feel it from her? She
Okay.
has this like, super good energy. It came across her email. That's why we were in contact.
Blush profusely. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for watching. There were so many comments. People were literally, you'll see the comments afterwards. People were literally like posting all of the things that you've done, your book, talking about how much your book has meant to them. Thank you for plugging in from everywhere all over the world. And I will see you again next week. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.